The whole process really lacks transparency.
Right.
People deserve having that transparency because ultimately it's the people who will decide who our Democratic nominee will be and ultimately who our next president, commander-in-chief will be. And when you see that lack of transparency, it creates, a lack of faith and trust in the process.
It's primetime television. If you want to be anybody in the Democratic Party, you better make sure you get on the stage at the presidential debates. So, what do you need to do to make it? Two things. First, get over 130,000 unique donations. Two, get at least 2% in a national poll. But here's where it gets tricky. Not every poll is the same, and if the Democratic National Committee doesn't like you, they can reject the poll results that show things in your favor. Now, Tulsi Gabbard has met the donations threshold. She's got over 2% in 26 different national polls. However, the Democratic National Committee says that doesn't count. They have their certified list. Sure, it's important to vet information that's being provided, but let's take a quick look at some of the polls that were rejected. Politico, The Economist, Reuters. If these widely respected outlets and news agencies aren't credible in America, then who is?
Polling in the United States, there is a club, a network of close associates and friends, and they frown upon those polls that are either new or are not members of the club or the association. So I would certainly speculate that has something to do with it. It is a partisan organization, the Democratic National Committee. So any polls, say, that may have a tradition of leaning Republican or not considered to be in the mainstream of Democratic partisanship, would be ruled out.
Even the polls deemed credible by the Democratic Party have a margin of error of between 2 and 6%. And when the criteria for being in the debates is only 2%, a margin of error like that is a pretty big deal. So Tulsi Gabbard could have between 0 and 7% support among American voters. Now, keep in mind, there are over 200 million people who are registered to vote in the United States of America. So what's the difference between 0 and 14 million? Well, whatever it is apparently not important to the Democratic National Committee.
There is a margin of sampling error. So if the margin of error is plus or minus 4%, what is 2% in the polls? If it's 1.51%, that the candidate has, that does get rounded up to 2%, whereas a 1.44%, which is meaningless. One can argue the Democratic National Committee is a private organization. We can establish our own rules, but then they also have to be open to the charges by somebody like Tulsi Gabbard, who says, this doesn't smell like it's fair. And frankly, I agree with her. I don't think it smells like it's fair.
Now, the DNC doesn't exactly have a reputation for impartiality and fairness. Leaked emails in 2016 showed that the Democratic Party leaders were working pretty hard to defeat Bernie Sanders and make sure that it was Hillary Clinton who ultimately took on Donald Trump. Now, after the outrage in 2016, the new Democratic Party chair, Tom Perez, promised to empower grassroots activists.
I am more committed than ever before to restoring voters' faith in our democratic process, because even the perception of impartiality or an unfair advantage undermines our ability to win. That is unacceptable. To that end, the new DNC, under my leadership, is committed to the task of making sure that our 2020 nominating process will be unquestionably fair and transparent.
So, as the list of candidates gets whittled down to one final nominee, voters will have to decide as to whether Mr. Perez is living up to his promise. Caleb Maupin, RT, New York.